Okay, well, we're here at the junction of Geisel Creek running that way, and this is Haverly Road running that way. There's south, there's north, and we're going to put our canoe in right over there. At one time, there was a town dump just to our right over there. Remember those days, Laddie?
Certainly do.
I don't remember. That's prior to my time.
Some of my trash is probably in that dump. Well, let's
We functioning properly there, Laddie?
I think it might be.
Okay. There's Cal Holvenstadt getting into his C1 canoe. C1 means single paddler. Canoe weighs approximately 30 pounds. It's made of Kevlar, same type of material that's used in jet fighters. Good wing material for jet fighters.
A little different speed, though, I suppose.
Cal's showing you the proper way in which to get into a canoe. Cal, hold up your paddle and show us the bend in your paddle. Every paddle that's made for long-time canoeing today has a bend in it, as you see there. Much more efficient than the old straight paddle.
And you hold it like this, not like that.
That's right. The bend in the paddle came about 25 years ago, and over one season, every canoeist that liked paddling switched paddles to a bent paddle.
You have a reverse gear on that thing?
Geisel Creek today is on the high side. We had rain yesterday and last night, and we had rain slightly before that. So we have rather high water. I just bumped into a log that was submerged there that kept Cal from going through. But now we're free. And floating downstream from Haverly Road and Geisel Creek Junction, the right front is a nesting box for wood ducks. Probably in the wrong place. My understanding, the wood ducks, as the name implies, like to nest in the woods, not on the water. as we go down the creek, you'll notice a yellow flower starting to bloom, and that's the water lotus, and a fairly recent addition to this creek. Never saw too much water lotus in years gone by, 10 or more years ago. But as you can see, it predominates quite a bit here today.
Stop for a second here. I want to get a close-up of one of the flowers.
Okay.
Just slow down a bit. There's one.
Those are really buds. The bloom will get to be maybe 3 inches or 4 inches in diameter. Cal, pick your shirt sleeve up out of the water. Attaboy. And contrary to expectations, we have not had a mosquito yet.
Yeah. What was that? That wasn't a mosquito?
All right, we're downstream maybe a half a mile from the junction where we put in. There are some logs in the way. You can tell that they've been cut to enable canoers to get through. Probably cut by Mike Grimm of the Nature Conservancy. He keeps this creek open for us so canoes can get through all the way to Dunes Lake, an old-time maps known as Mud Lake. Now we're seeing the water lily-like plant, the lotus, on the sides of the creek, but it's also the lotus are covered with little floating weeds, bits of green called duckweed. And you can see spots of the floating duckweed on the surface of the water, and it gathers along the sides of the creek into light mats, bright green. Where at times when the creek is flowing very slowly, the duckweed will cover the entire creek. But the fact that the creek is flowing rather hard as far as this creek is concerned, why the duckweed is kept to the sides. Okay, we're about 3/4 of a mile downstream from the junction where we put in, and it's a beautiful day with a very, very light wind, slightly clouded sky, creek high. You'll notice a lot of dead snags that have fallen into the creek. Just bumped a log that had fallen into the creek here. And this is something of a swamp area, and at times it's been very dry, and somehow the spruce that you see dead and lying in the water have succumbed to some type of disease. Not sure what it was, but it's common to this area around here and the intermittent swamp area that we're in. Wetlands, if you want to use a better word, more acceptable word.
Could they just be falling in the creek because of the lack of root support? Or do you think they're actually diseased first?
Could be. But this creek is wooded areas on both sides, both banks. But beyond the wooded areas on the banks, of course, is farmland. So this drains quite an area of farmland through here. And of course, farm runoff is one of the problems that creeks of this nature face. You see the duckweed and the lotus, and you can see a lot of weed growth on the bottom of the creek, and it's because of a high nutrient level that this creek is experiencing. And of course, one of the aims of environmentalists is to keep the pesticides and fertilizers on the land and not in the creek. It's,
Okay, you can narrate it.
all right, we're coming to the junction where the creek goes into Dunes Lake. Another bend around here and we'll be in Dunes Lake. Dunes Lake is maybe a half mile across, and the Corps of Engineer maps show that Dunes Lake has an average depth of 1.3 feet. That's less than 2 feet on the average. And it's a very, very shallow lake. And Geisel Creek runs through it. And on the other side of Dunes Lake, the entrance, or rather the exit from the lake for all the water that comes into it, is Shivering Sands Creek. And if we're fortunate, we'll get across the lake and see where Shivering Sands Creek begins. But in front of you, you see Dunes Lake.
Now tell me here, why are we paddling rather than poling? What would make a decision to pole rather than paddle?
Rather than pole,
Yeah, why would you do one or the other? It seems like it's just shallow enough it could be poled.
we could be poling. This would be a river to pole on. But poling, usually you stand if you pole properly.
So
And
a
gets
canoe's not good
it's
for
much more unstable to pole. As you see right now, about the average depth, you see milfoil seaweed which got in here some way. You look particularly on the left-hand side, you can see seaweed growth coming up, and there's milfoil seaweed down there. Now, in past years, I was able to paddle the creek year-round, but today, this milfoil seaweed gets to be so heavy that in another few weeks you will not be able to paddle on this lake whatsoever. It'll just be one solid mat of seaweed. And I don't see much bird life here today, but ordinarily speaking, you come out of that creek junction there and out onto the lake, and there can be hundreds of Canada geese, some ducks. Once in a while on shore there'll be a sandhill crane, and this is a sandhill crane nesting area. Later on we'll try and see if we can find where some of the nests are. And right now we're having our difficulties getting through all the milfoil seaweed here. Okay, you're on? All right, well, we're coming up on the other side of Dunes Lake. Dunes Lake property and the lake itself is owned by Doorland Preserves Limited, and they're an organization of environmentalists that keep the area pristine and in a natural way. They do allow hunting on it, particularly for their own use. But other than hunting, it has no development whatsoever on it. Okay, now one of our problems is getting through this mass of cattails that are ahead to the other side of the lake. And I think my entrance is just to our right front, right through this lotus bed ahead there. And there we see a little swirl, some of the fish life, all carp. And as we get closer to the shore, you'll see more carp. They're in a spawning condition right now, and they're looking for a place to lay their eggs, fertilize those eggs. All right, we're looking for a passageway through those cattails. As we get closer, you'll see they're about 5 or 6 feet high, so it's not going to be easy finding the passageway, but it's there.
What kind of bird is there?
I think it might be to our right and around the bend. That's what I'm thinking.
We're in the wrong place, huh?
No? Okay, Cal, push your paddle down as far as you can. It's in muck. That deep. Now stir up the muck.
Can you get it back out though?
Okay, look at the muck. Look at that mud. That's all the topsoil from Wisconsin that's come down that stream over the years. And that's why this lake was called Mud Lake for many years before the name was changed to the more proper sounding Dunes Lake. But a long, long time ago, the Smith brothers, Ralph Smith and Hap Smith, lived on Brower Road in a farm. And one October, their mother got a phone call. And these two teenage boys were told to go out on the lake in their makeshift craft and try and find out what was happening. There was a lot of gunshots being fired out here. They came out in their little flat-bottom leaky boat, cold October day, and found two hunters mired in this muck all the way up to their waists. And they tried and finally pried these two fellows out. And the Coast Guard was also informed of this, and they finally came out and was able to assist and remove these two hunters from this deep, deep muck, which is the best farm soil that Wisconsin could send down the creek. One of the hunters said afterwards that he needed some sustenance, and his first request was to get a good Wisconsin beer. But that story of Ralph and Hap Smith, Ralph, of course, today owns the sawmill at the corner of County T and Glidden Drive. Hap Smith went on to become a famous veterinarian, lives in Sturgeon Bay. But they're very, very familiar with this area. We're talking 70 plus years ago.
He's lucky they only sunk up to their waist. I think you could sink up to your neck.
I believe Cal's right. You could sink up to your neck in this muck. Somewhere we put into this lake, and there's a beautiful sand bottom over there. If we get a chance, we'll take a little detour on the way back and can show you a hard sand bottom. Very different portion of the lake. We are on the other side of the lake, and we've come around a point and opened up into a different portion of the lake. Look at the bottom, and you can see a sand bottom here instead of the muck that we had on the opposite side of the lake. So this is a portion of the lake that the creek has not flowed through and dumped its load of Wisconsin topsoil on the way. Cal, can you push your paddle down into the sand? Can your paddle go down in the sand here? There, it's touchy now. Now push it down. Doesn't go down. Aha! A different bottom, right, Cal?
Right.
You got 1 foot of water, and then a nice white sand pan around to the right. You can see all kinds of white sand there, and a nice sand bottom. What a different portion of the lake. Solid. You could get out here and walk if you wanted to. Beautiful sand on the bottom. And ahead, on the right-hand side, about 8 o'clock, we see a red-winged blackbird. We'll try and get a little closer to him. They're nesting in there. There's a pair. There's a nest someplace in there. See what we can find out.
This is Cal Holvenstadt. We're canoeing into the wind and up the current of Geisel Creek. It's June 7th, 2006, and a beautiful day for canoeing. But any day the water's not froze is a beautiful day for canoeing. This isn't a very long creek, but it's scenic. We haven't seen too much in the way of wildlife, but in the past I've seen wildlife along the river. A couple years ago, my wife and I were canoeing up here, and there was a mother duck and her baby ducklings paddling up in front of us, and one of the ducklings got a little separated, and something came out of the creek, either a large turtle or a fish, and snapped it up and took it down. Canoeing's a great sport if you haven't tried it. It's been my therapy for over 50 years. One of the men in the other canoe, Klein, and I raced against each other years ago. I didn't even know him. Down in the Des Plaines River in Illinois. I was at his house one day after moving up here into Door County, and was walking down a hallway, and I saw a picture of a man in a canoe very similar to the one I'm in now, with a number on the side of it, canoeing, and it looked like he was in a race. And I thought, that looks like the Des Plaines race. And I went down and talked to his wife, Cal Bonavere, and said, who's that up in the picture up there? And she said, that's Herb, that's the Des Plaines race. And I'd been racing against them for years and never knew him.
Did you ever catch up with him?
Huh?
Did you ever catch up with him?
No. I never beat Herb. I'd come in second, I'd come in third, I'd come in fourth, but I never took first in that race, and Herb took quite a few firsts. Some of the nicest part of canoeing is the silence and the peace and quiet. And I found out that if you do a lot of your canoeing alone in the wilderness, you turn into more of a part of it, a participant, not just a viewer. When you're with our group, it doesn't seem that way. When you're by yourself, you see more wildlife. They don't seem to be concerned about you as much, and you become a part of nature. Oh, we're going back to where we put in, and we're in Geisel Creek, and we're right at our put in at Haverly Road. And here we are back at the put-in. Now if we can get out of the canoe without tipping over, that's a good thing. And these old knees, 72 years old, aren't as good as they used to be. But I made it. One nice thing about a Kevlar canoe is that even when you get older, you can take it on and put it on and take it off your car by yourself. My old fiberglass canoe weighed a ton and wasn't quite this easy.
That's it?
That's it. It's on.
You must lag it down, don't you?
Yeah, I strap it down. The first canoe I owned weighed over 98 pounds.
I'm going to have you pan our cars with the canoes on.
All right, we can do that while you're talking, actually.
Okay. All right, this is Herb Klein and Cal Holvenstadt, and we have our two canoes on top of the car, and the person that's panning the camera around, that's Laddie Chapman doing an excellent job. And these two old-time canoers that are going to show up in your picture, when we used to be canoe racers, I would never give our age, but I would say together we are so many years old. And together today, I just figured out, we're 58 years old, 158 together. And we're not going to split that up because that's splitting hairs.
Now Herb wanted to sing you a song after our canoeing. He's good at singing. I can't sing.
Oh, I don't know.
No, you can't even sing Row, Row, Row Your Boat. It was a great day for canoeing. Beautiful day. Turned out sunny. The temperature's, what, 65 degrees or something. A little light breeze. Couldn't be nicer. And it was fun.
Thank you.